The desert night of June 23, 2025, held a deceptive peace. At Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, the air was thick with the scent of hot sand and jet fuel, a familiar perfume to Sergeant Marcus Thorne. He leaned against the landing gear of a C-17 Globemaster, the metal still warm from the day's blistering sun, and scrolled through pictures of his daughter's first t-ball game on his phone. A grainy video showed her swinging a bright red bat, missing the ball by a foot and falling over in a fit of giggles. A smile touched his lips. Just 2 more months, 63 days until he'd be there, sitting on those same bleachers, not watching a pixelated video a world away. A low, guttural rumble, too deep to be an engine, vibrated through the soles of his boots. He looked up, scanning the star-dusted sky. Nothing. Probably just a heavy transport taking off from Doha International. He went back to the video. The second rumble was closer, a violent tearing sound as if the fabric of the night itself was being ripped apart. Before he could process it, the base klaxon screamed to life, a frantic, ear-splitting wail that meant only one thing: incoming. To the bunkers! Incoming! Incoming! The shouts were almost swallowed by the sirens. Marcus didn't hesitate. He dropped his phone and ran, his training kicking in, his body moving before his mind could catch up. Men and women in various states of dress poured from the barracks, their faces pale in the flashing emergency lights. He saw the first streaks in the sky, malevolent orange lines clawing their way upward from the horizon, arcing toward them. Then, from the perimeter of the base, a new sound erupted, a series of concussive thumps as the Patriot launchers spat their interceptors into the darkness. White trails of smoke shot skyward to meet the orange. For a breathtaking moment, the night sky turned into a deadly fireworks display. Brilliant flashes of light blossomed high above, turning night into an eerie, strobing day. 1, 2, 10, 20 explosions. The THAAD batteries joined in, reaching for targets at the edge of the atmosphere. A cheer went up from some of the running soldiers. The shield was holding. But the shield wasn't perfect. Marcus watched in horror as one orange streak slipped through the web of interceptors. It seemed to hang in the air for an eternity before plummeting downward. His eyes followed its trajectory. It was heading for the fuel depot. He screamed a warning that no one could hear over the din. The world tore itself open. A column of fire erupted from the depot, a monstrous, hungry thing that painted the clouds orange and sucked the air from his lungs. The shockwave hit him like a physical blow, throwing him against the concrete wall of the hangar. He tasted dust and blood. The steel frame of the maintenance bay groaned, then buckled with the sound of a dying giant folding in on itself. Another missile got through, and another. This one struck a maintenance hangar, its steel frame collapsing like paper. Shrapnel, hot and jagged, scythed through the air. He ducked behind the C-17's massive tire, praying it would be enough. The air filled with the acrid smell of cordite and burning plastic. Then came the worst. A deafening crack, closer than the others, followed by a sickening, wet thud. It had hit the barracks, the very building where just an hour ago soldiers were sleeping, writing letters home, or watching movies on their laptops. The sirens died, replaced by sound far more terrible: human screams. The attack had lasted less than 10 minutes. When Marcus finally staggered to his feet, Al Udeid was a vision from hell. Craters scarred the tarmac. Fires raged unchecked, casting dancing, demonic shadows. The symbol of American power in the Gulf was a wounded, burning beast. He ran toward the collapsed barracks, his mind a numb void of shock. He joined dozens of others, pulling at twisted rebar and heavy chunks of concrete with their bare hands. The dust was so thick it choked him, mixing with the tears streaming down his face. He saw things he would never unsee. Friends he had shared breakfast with that morning were gone. He heard a faint cry and dug faster, his fingers raw and bleeding. Under a slab of concrete, he found a phone. Its screen was shattered, but it was still lit, displaying the last thing its owner had seen. It was a picture of a little girl with a missing front tooth, swinging a bright red t-ball bat. Marcus fell to his knees, a raw animal sob tearing from his throat, its sound lost in the symphony of chaos and grief. The sterile quiet of the White House Situation Room was a universe away from the fire and smoke of Al Udeid. On the main screen, a live drone feed showed flames still raging against the Qatari darkness. National Security Advisor Sarah Jenkins watched, her jaw tight, a cold knot forming in her stomach. The numbers on the sidebar kept ticking upward, each digit representing a life, a family, a future extinguished. 47 killed, 162 wounded. The numbers felt obscene, clinical. The door flew open and President Trump stormed in, his face a pale mask of fury. He didn't sit. He paced behind the high-backed chairs, his knuckles white where he gripped a folder. His senior aides and the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who had been in mid-briefing, fell silent. 47 Americans, he bit out, his voice a low growl that silenced the room. 47. That's Pearl Harbor on my watch. He slammed the folder onto the massive mahogany table, and the sound cracked like a rifle shot. General Mark Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, cleared his throat. Mr. President, we have preliminary options. He gestured to a map of Iran dotted with red icons. We can execute a limited proportional strike, target the mobile launchers responsible, send a clear message. A message? Trump scoffed, his voice dripping with contempt. They just sent us a message with ballistic missiles, 47 times. What message does a slap on the wrist send? That we're weak? That they can do it again? Sarah spoke, her voice calm and measured, a counterpoint to the president's rage. A limited strike minimizes the risk of escalation, sir. Iran has over 500,000 troops it can mobilize. They can attempt to close the Strait of Hormuz. The global economy. The economy. Trump cut her off, turning his glare on her. They killed our people, Sarah. They're not worried about the Dow Jones. They're testing us. They think we don't have the stomach for a real fight. The Secretary of Defense chimed in. Intelligence reports 80% of their launchers have already been relocated to hardened shelters, Mr. President. A strike on their launch sites would be symbolic at best. We'd be hitting empty desert. The room felt charged, the air thick with unspoken consequences. Every person there understood the gravity of the moment. This was the precipice. What's the alternative? The president demanded, his eyes sweeping across the generals. It was Milley who answered, his voice grim. He pointed to a different set of targets on the map, targets buried deep under mountains encased in layers of steel and reinforced concrete. Natanz, Fordo, Iraq. The alternative, sir, is a decisive blow. We go after the head of the snake. We target their nuclear program. We set them back decades. A heavy silence descended. This was the option no one wanted to speak aloud. It wasn't a message. It was a declaration of war. The risk of escalation would be immense, Sarah warned, her mind racing through the cascading possibilities. A wider regional war, oil prices skyrocketing, a global crisis. Every U.S. asset in the region would become a target. We have over 40,000 personnel from Bahrain to Kuwait. They're already a target, Trump roared, his fist hitting the table again. Al Udeid proves that. If we do nothing, if we show an ounce of hesitation, we're just painting a bullseye on the back of every American serving over there. We're telling Tehran they can kill our soldiers with impunity. He stopped pacing and leaned over the table, his eyes locking with each person in the room. The fury was still there, but beneath it was a cold, absolute certainty. The debate was over before it had truly begun. They killed 47 of our people. They want war. Fine. A chilling finality settled in his voice. We'll erase their nuclear program from the map. Get it done. The order was simple, final, and absolute. Sarah Jenkins felt a cold dread mixed with a grim sense of inevitability. The gears of a machine far larger and more powerful than anyone in the room had begun to turn. The clock to America's counterstrike was ticking. Thousands of miles away, Major Eva Valkyrie Rostova was jolted awake by the alert. She was in the air within 2 hours, her F-35A Lightning II being refueled mid-flight over the Mediterranean as she streaked towards the UAE. The mission briefing came through encrypted channels directly to her cockpit display. Operation Iron Vengeance. She studied the target package, her heart rate steady, her focus absolute. Natanz. A facility buried under granite and concrete. Her payload, 2 GBU-28 bunker busters. 5,000-pound behemoths designed for one purpose, to dig deep and obliterate the unobliterable. She felt the familiar pre-mission calm settle over her. There was no room for anger or fear at 30,000 feet. There was only the aircraft, the mission, and the cold, hard physics of what was to come. As the KC-135 tanker detached, leaving her alone in the vast darkness, she ran a gloved hand over the throttle. She wasn't thinking about geopolitics or the global economy. She was thinking about the 47 names that had been read aloud during the briefing. For them, she would fly into the heart of the storm. The strike began not with the roar of a jet engine, but with the hiss of compressed gas. From the dark waters of the Arabian Sea, the steel hulls of U.S. Navy destroyers and submerged submarines shuddered. Hatches slid open, and dozens of Tomahawk cruise missiles vaulted into the night. They leveled off just above the waves, flying at 550 miles per hour, their guidance systems weaving them through coastal terrain, too low and too fast for most radars to catch. Minutes later, along Iran's southern coast, command centers and radar dishes disintegrated in precisely timed fireballs. The first blow was blindfolding the enemy. High above, 3 EA-18G Growlers swept into Iranian airspace. They were the ghosts of the operation. They didn't carry bombs, they carried the electromagnetic spectrum. Powerful jamming pods unleashed a torrent of electronic noise, a digital hurricane that crashed over Iran's air defense network. Inside fortified bunkers, radar screens that should have shown the incoming American strike package dissolved into a sea of meaningless static. The sophisticated, Russian-made S-300 systems were rendered deaf and blind. An Iranian officer's frantic voice, caught on signals intelligence, was a testament to their success. "We are blind. We cannot see them. Where are they?" They were already there. Major Eva Valkyrie Rostova guided her F-35, a black diamond against the dark sky, deep into Iranian territory. Her screens were clear. No alerts, no missile locks. The Growlers had paved a silent highway for them. She was a phantom closing in on her prey. "Valkyrie 1, target designated," the calm, digitized voice of her weapons officer sounded in her helmet. On her helmet-mounted display, a green bracket locked onto the coordinates for the Natanz enrichment facility. It looked like nothing, just a patch of empty desert mountain. But she knew that hundreds of feet below that patch of sand and rock lay the heart of Iran's nuclear ambitions. "Weapon away," she said, her voice betraying no emotion. She toggled the release. A heavy thump vibrated through the airframe as 2 tons of laser-guided steel detached from her belly. She didn't watch it fall. Her training was absolute. Bank hard, push the throttle to the firewall, and focus on the egress point. The bomb was on its own now. Seconds later, a flash lit up her cockpit from below, so bright it momentarily bleached her night vision display. It wasn't a surface explosion. It was a deep, subterranean pulse of light that seemed to emanate from the ground itself. She felt the shockwave a moment later, a solid, violent ripple in the air that tossed her billion-dollar aircraft like a leaf. The ground itself had heaved, a silent, monstrous convulsion she felt through the very bones of her jet. Simultaneously, F-15E Strike Eagles were unloading their own payloads on the Fordo facility, hidden even deeper beneath a mountain. And then came the second wave. 12 long-range ballistic missiles, launched from bases hundreds of miles away, descended from the upper atmosphere. They fell at Mach 5, nearly 4,000 miles per hour. There was no defense, no time to react. They slammed into facilities near Iraq and Isfahan, annihilating centrifuge halls and storage bunkers in thunderous detonations. The entire coordinated attack, from the first Tomahawk launch to the last ballistic missile impact, lasted less than 25 minutes. Flying back over the Persian Gulf, the rising sun painting the horizon in hues of orange and purple, Valkyrie's cockpit was silent save for the hum of the electronics. "All strike elements report targets destroyed," came the voice from command. "All birds returning to base." She took a deep, steadying breath, the adrenaline finally beginning to recede, leaving a profound exhaustion in its wake. She had performed her mission with flawless precision. Yet, looking out at the serene beauty of the dawn, she felt no triumph. Only the immense, soul-crushing weight of what had been done. Back at Al Udeid, Sergeant Marcus Thorne stood on the scarred tarmac. The rescue efforts had turned into recovery. The smoke had mostly cleared, but the smell of death hung heavy in the air. A fellow airman ran up to him, holding out a tablet. "They got him, Marcus. They hit back. Wiped out their whole damn nuclear program." Marcus looked at the screen. It showed satellite images, before and after. One showed buildings and infrastructure. The next showed nothing but massive, dark craters. He stared at the images of destruction, of a retaliation delivered with overwhelming technological fury. He thought of the 47 soldiers lost, of the phone he had found in the rubble, of the little girl in the T-ball uniform. He had wanted vengeance. He had craved it with every fiber of his being. But looking at the cold, sterile proof of it, he felt nothing. Just a vast, hollow emptiness where the anger used to be. The fires in Qatar had been answered with deeper fires in Iran, and he wondered when, if ever, the burning would stop. The world awoke to the consequences. Oil prices spiked 22% in a single day. Diplomats scrambled. News headlines screamed of war. In less than 72 hours, a regional spark had ignited a global firestorm. Iran's nuclear program, 3 decades in the making, had been reduced to rubble in less than 30 minutes. The cost in Iranian lives was estimated in the thousands. The cost in pride and strategic position was incalculable. For America, the message sent was unambiguous and brutal. From Pearl Harbor to 9/11, and now to Al Udeid, history had once again shown that when America is struck, its response will be decisive, overwhelming, and unforgettable. It was a lesson written in fire, a cautionary tale not just for Iran, but for the entire world. This story, though fictional, serves as a stark reminder of a timeless truth. Violence begets violence, and the path of escalation is a perilous one with costs measured not only in treasure, but in human lives and the soul of nations. It highlights how quickly diplomacy can fail and how the advanced technologies of modern warfare can deliver destruction on a scale that is difficult to comprehend, all in the span of minutes. The true challenge for any great power lies not just in its ability to wage war, but in its wisdom to prevent it. What do you think? If you were in the Situation Room, what would you have advised? Could a different response have prevented further bloodshed? Or was overwhelming force the only language the adversary would understand? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you appreciate stories that explore the complex realities and human side of modern conflict, please consider subscribing to the channel and liking the video. Your support helps us continue to bring these important narratives to light.